Welcome to the Brain Podcast. I'm your host, Peter Chadi of Creative Media. Today I speak with Dr. Moiya McTier, Senior Advisor and Explainer-in-Chief of the Human Artistry Campaign, the global creative initiative for the advancement of responsible AI. The campaign represents more than 180 creative organizations across 34 countries. That means actors, recording artists, journalists, publishers, record labels, athletes, and more. Hard to believe, but the campaign is already 3 years old, and Moiya has been speaking on its behalf from early on, representing the creative industries on Capitol Hill to promote, wait for it, yes, responsible AI legislation. Although you and I may understandably believe that there's absolutely no AI regulatory appetite or movement in DC, Moiya tells me that two major pieces of legislation do have bipartisan support, and she remains optimistic. I ask her about it all, so here's my conversation with Moiya McTier.
Moiya McTier, welcome to The Brain.
Oh, thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you. Where are you today, Moiya?
I'm home in New York, surrounded by snowdrifts and ice.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so it's a good day to do this.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to be outside anyway. Are you somewhere warmer, I hope?
Well, I hate to say, yeah, I'm in San Diego. And I won't even tell you. I won't even tell you what the day is looking like here. That'd be too mean.
Thank you. I appreciate it. My friends in Florida have been sending me pictures of their sky for the last couple of days. Just rude,
that's
disrespectful.
Nice. Yeah, it's terrible. That's terrible. Okay, so Moiya, we're going to get right into things. So the Human Artistry Campaign, that I've known you now for a couple years, and you've been with the Human Artistry Campaign from the very beginning. And
almost.
Yeah, pretty much from the beginning as like the lead spokesperson for, correct?
Yeah, yes, an advisor. I'm an advisor role and the public voice of the campaign.
Yes, okay. Public voice, which means you spend a lot of time on Capitol Hill too.
Yeah, not as much lately, but definitely at the beginning of the campaign, before we started the Stealing Isn't Innovation campaign, I talked to some people in those big white buildings.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We'll get into that a little bit. Maybe it's no accident, the fact that you're not up there as much as you used to be. But first, it was just recently announced, and you were a significant part of the announcement, the Stealing Isn't Innovation campaign. So tell us what that is.
Absolutely. This is a campaign to get more people talking about how AI actually works and how it is stealing from artists to train the algorithms, and how that's not creativity, that's not innovation, it's not something we should be applauding. And I love this campaign because I think it focuses on the third arm of the campaign's goals. There's the regulation and there's the getting commitment from AI companies. But the third arm, which I am most passionate about, is getting people educated about generative AI and how it works and how it impacts artists. Because we honestly will have a harder time doing those other two goals, getting regulations passed and getting the AI companies to care, if regular people aren't talking about it.
So what do you say to those who, the frequent refrain is that it's just technology marching forward. It's just another tool and so, this is nothing different than the evolution of technology and giving the artists more freedom to create and democratizing creativity.
Wouldn't that be great if that was the case, if it was as simple as that? Look, the campaign understands that technology has always been a part of art, and we've always used tools like synthesizers or going back to the stylus as an original tool for writing. That used to be a big deal. But now we really have to reckon with the fact that it's so easy to use generative AI as more than just a tool to help art. It truly can be used as a replacement. It truly can make artists it can threaten artists' livelihood because it can reproduce their style. It can reproduce their face and their voice. And no kind of technology has ever been able to do that before, not well enough to trick the human eye and ear. So that's why we need to be really careful about generative AI. It's a completely different beast.
Yeah. And you know that I've been following this very deeply, and I write and speak about it a lot. And I'm a lawyer by trade as well as just a business guy. And I care for artists very deeply. because ultimately I believe that everything flows from, the creativity in the human mind and that sort of thing. And so what we're talking about here is, without getting into the details of it, but the copyright infringement, the taking of intellectual property without consent and compensation. We talk about that, but also with the individuals and the individual artists, it's not just the copyrights that are associated with it. And there's not enough talk about this, but it's also the name, image, likeness. It's also the biometrics of individuals. And so it's personal autonomy, right? Like it's about control over yourself. And so what we see with there's a related campaign that just launched, Say No to Suno. And Suno is a big audio generator that's out there like creating music where you can create music through a prompt. And it was either they or Udio, which is another one, that fully admitted early on in litigation that they copied the world of recorded music that's available on the internet. They just copied it without giving anything back. And so that gives the ability to create songs, emulate voices, like you said. Those are the things we're talking about. It's not an emotional reaction that artists, look, there's an emotional reaction to it too, but what you're talking about goes deeper than that.
Yeah, it's not just that, these artists are so sensitive and they're getting attached to their art and they don't want machines to do it. No, it, first of all, is a threat to their careers. Second of all, it's offensive to the years that they've probably put in honing their craft. And then this machine comes along and steals their style, which is not protected by copyright. If it's not lyrics that you've written or a performance that you've done or a piece of art that you've painted, style is not protected by copyright. So it's a murkier area legally, but ethically, we understand that that's still not okay. That's still something you can steal from an artist.
Yeah, look, there was a famous recent example where Studio Gilby, I think that's how you pronounce it, it's anime art. And this, world-renowned artist who spent years creating his anime. And then all of a sudden, you have generative tools that have trained on. So essentially, for lack of a better word of saying it, copying all the anime to put in its training data set, which then allows the reader or the user to spit out another style, exactly like in the style of Studio Gilby and that artist, even though it's not exactly replicating it. And so that's what we're talking about too. It's the style. It's not like necessarily identical and spitting it out in the traditional copyright way. And
although
that's
sometimes it does.
Yeah, sometimes it does too. That's true.
Yes.
So you
that's
mentioned,
how they're catching them.
We'll get into regulation because I want to understand the state of regulation. But you also said that AI company commitments. And I think that you said that was like the second leg of the three-prong. We talked a little bit about education, then we'll get into regulation. But in terms of, the fact that you see like Microsoft and Amazon both recently announced content marketplaces where, as I understand them, these are places where now if a content creator, an IP holder or persona wants to participate and put their IP or whatever into this content marketplace, then anytime that there's some kind of generative output that's created based in part, there will be an ongoing royalty scheme. So do you, like an ongoing payment to the artist, do you believe that that's indicative of at least we're seeing an understanding that theft is not going to be the long-term answer here? Are you feeling optimism?
I am. I'm seeing some more examples of AI companies agreeing to licensing structures. We saw this with the Udio settlement with UMG, and this sounds like some more examples of that. For the entire lifespan of the campaign, we've been saying that the way to have ethical generative AI is to get consent from the artists, then give those artists credit, and then compensate them. You can talk about different compensation models for sure, but for a long time, the AI companies were refusing to even track what artists' work was used in their training set. So this is a sign of progress, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into regulation. Because kind of the conventional wisdom, including my basic understanding, is that there is nothing going on Capitol Hill when it comes to like any kind of movement towards some impactful regulation in general on AI, let alone on AI and the creative arts and as they impact in creative industries. When it comes to federal regulation, there were fits and starts of that. So you've been on Capitol Hill now for quite some time representing Human Artistry Campaign. First, just let's start kind of high level. What is the mood like? How would you characterize the mood for regulation then compared to what you are feeling and seeing now on the federal level?
On the federal level, AI seems to have dropped off the radar a little bit. When I started with the campaign, it felt like everyone was talking about AI and everyone was really worried about it in a nonpartisan way. It seemed, in a bipartisan way. It seemed like people on both sides of the aisle were scared about deepfakes and voice clones. And now it's a couple years later. It still has bipartisan support. There are especially 2 pieces of legislation that the campaign is excited about, but the fervor seems to have died off a little. There are other things that government is focusing on right now.
Yes, don't we know that?
Yes, we know that. But there are 2, if I could talk about the 2.
Yes, I would like to definitely hear about those 2 areas where you have some kind of optimism.
Yes. One we've been talking about for a while. Politics moves slowly, but it's the No Fakes Act, which isn't specifically about artists, but it would give any person in the U.S. a legal way to fight back against digital replicas, convincing digital replicas like voice clones and deepfakes. The other
Let me touch upon that one.
Yeah.
What is holding that back? What is the pushback to that piece of legislation?
That's a good question. I'm not sure exactly what the pushback is. From my understanding, it's sponsored by both Democrats and Republicans. It has support. I think maybe it's just not high on the priorities list right now, but I'm not sure what details they're hashing out.
Other than potentially, just theoretically, the overall administration has objectively speaking, regulation, putting guardrails up, putting any kind of impediment, I guess, for a lack of a better word, to just speeding through is seen as friction. So there may be just the simple friction element of that is not the vibe that's coming on down from from the leaders of the AI developers. So in general, there was, and tell me if you agree with this, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, Elon Musk was on board calling for a 6-month moratorium on on development. That certainly has gone by the wayside. So the cautionary sort of like thinking aspect of this has just kind of gone to accelerationism at the highest levels. That's what I see.
Look, I can't say necessarily that you're wrong, that there's just some friction because this is an administration that doesn't really want to limit AI of any sort.
Right.
I was very encouraged by the Senate vote. I think it was a historic, 99 vote against having an AI regulation moratorium. So even from if from the top down there's pushback against AI regulation, at least these Congress bodies have a different idea.
And that's what you're talking about there. The 99-1 vote was the efforts to rein in states from being able to implement their own AI regulation, right?
Yes, I believe so, which is separate from federal, but yeah.
Yeah. And
encouraging.
And when we're talking about the media and entertainment business, California, presumably, are you involved in any of the lobbying efforts or the speaking efforts in California itself or New York? Okay.
No, none of the state-specific ones.
Okay. And then what is the second piece of regulation that you were talking about?
The second piece is it's always been our goal, but we got started on it more recently. It's called the Train Act. This gets to the transparency question about AI, where we as artists, as people who enjoy art, we deserve to know what copyrighted works were used to train AI models. So on the input end. And on the output end, we deserve to know when content was generated by AI. And the Train Act definitely addresses the input end, and I think there's still in negotiations to figure out what other transparency protections will be in the bill.
And what's the status of that bill?
It's still pretty early, but also has bipartisan support, and we are pretty optimistic that it'll make some progress through Congress this year.
Okay, so bipartisan support, does it seem to be like maybe not 99-1 or what you saw with the no fakes or what you're seeing with no fakes, but do you see it as being heavily popular from a bipartisan perspective?
I'm really not sure.
Okay.
I hear more people talking about no fakes, but that could just be because we've been lobbying for it longer.
Yeah. Is there anything else from just a pure regulation or legislation standpoint that we should know about in the, who are listening to this, who are watching this?
Those are the two pieces that the campaign is really paying attention to that we think have the potential to impact artists. But there are definitely others. I don't know the details of those, but I feel like digital replicas they're an issue that people are trying to attack from multiple angles.
So, if you stand back at I was just listening to an Ezra podcast with one of the top execs at Anthropic, and they were just talking about we all know, we read about the fact that AI is developing its sophistication so much faster and faster and faster and faster, and Anthropic was saying that by the end of this year, they expect that 99% of Claude code will be written by Claude itself, rather than the human engineers, and that the human engineers are kind of there just to kind of oversee and kind of keep guardrails in. But they were talking about, Anthropic was even saying that they're hiring very few entry-level engineers now, very few. And, it's more of a focus on some of these supervisory types who have more, I guess, deeper sophistication. Long and short of it is that in the conversation, and something we all know and we're reading more and more about, is that there's expected significant job displacement. And so just in general, and this gets away from just the Human Artistry Campaign, but just, you're involved in a lot of conversations in circles. If this is the case where, whether it's in the creative industry and artists are displaced, and supporters across motion pictures, gaffers, whatever, are displaced at a massive level, and and then just broader across all industries, entry-level jobs, et cetera. Have there been any public policy conversations that have been real from what you see in terms of, okay, if that is the case, because even the leaders of the top AI developers are saying that that is not an unlikely scenario, then have you been involved in any public policy discussions of how society deals with that? What the solutions, the practical solutions are when you have a workforce that has been sidelined and needs to find a path forward in all aspects of their life?
Unfortunately, not. I have a hard time believing that policies to support people who are pushed out of work would not get the kind of support as quickly as these other bills. But that's the pessimist in me. That's not an official campaign stance.
No, but I guess it's more just there's this feeling that we all know is a real possibility. We don't know what whether that's 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, but we're hearing more and more increasingly aggressive timelines from the leaders themselves of these AI developers. So,
and it's not like we haven't been talking about this since the very beginning of generative AI. And the thing that gets me, the thought that keeps running through my head is, oh, I never thought the leopards would eat my face.
Yeah.
Like that, I think of that when I hear about engineers losing their jobs to AI writing its own code, that they were not concerned, or they are not concerned, that AI can replicate art and creative stuff. I would love to hear how engineers are feeling about potentially being replaced by AI itself. But to me, the true irony is that, of course, this was coming. For the last couple decades, AI has been, a lot of it, kind of a black box that engineers and developers have built on top of what came before without really understanding what it's doing. And so, yeah, it's a dangerous situation that they have created, and now we all need to work together to figure out how to stop it.
So in the creative arts, the world that you're involved in, where you're representing all of these different organizations and artists, and just in all the conversations you've had since you've started with the Human Artistry Campaign till now, how would you say that the general mindset in the creative industry has changed and evolved from, a couple years ago to where it is today?
More aware. When I started a couple years ago, people didn't really know what AI was or how it's built off of their work as artists. Now I have more conversations where the artists understand that. It's split on people saying, oh, I don't care, they can take my art because I can always make new stuff, and people saying, oh, no, I'm actually really upset that they're taking my art. I spent a long time making that. It's pretty split, but what I am seeing more of is, because artists are innovative and they want to break barriers and try new things, I'm hearing from a lot of artists who would love to try working with AI, to experiment with it, but it's hard to find an ethical way to do so. And now that they're aware of the stealing part of generative AI, they don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there, if you had to just kind of put high-level numbers, would you say, what percentage of those who you've interacted with in the creative community, because you go across the ecosystem, like you talk to people across the board, and executives, artists, representatives, all of this. What percentage would you say in the creative industries, media and entertainment and the arts, are generally optimistic about AI versus pessimistic about AI and the impacts on that world of the creative arts?
I'd say there's a probably solid 50% in the middle who are kind of concerned, don't really want to use it, and kind of like they would use it if they had to, or they maybe use it in their personal lives, but not in their art. So it's like a mix. They think sometimes generative AI is okay and sometimes it's not. I've talked to very few artists who want to treat it like the Wild West and just go with it. They don't care about the ethics. They don't care about the laws. They just want to move fast and break things. And I talked to slightly more artists who are like, no, I never want to touch it at all. And actually, it's interesting. I think it depends on field, too, because there are educators who are part of the campaign. There are athletes who are part of the campaign. And they have differing opinions. I'm talking to a lot of educators where the proportion seems to be flipped, and more people are like, I don't want my students to use it. And when a professor or teacher comes along who does want to use it in their classroom, they seem to be the minority, but it is growing.
You mentioned athletes.
Yes. A lot of the talk about AI that I see with athletes is more positive. One use that I've been seeing for generative AI, or AI in general, is looking out for online bullying for athletes. So in a way, it's been used to protect them. And I would love to talk to more athletes about this. That's a goal of mine for the year, because I imagine that there are a lot of athletes who make money from brand deals and from using their likeness to sponsor things. And I do wonder how they'd feel about generative AI potentially impacting their ability to do that. So yeah, the opinions are all over the place. And that's, I think, part of why the campaign and the regulations that we're pushing for, it's slow progress because we have to care about the opinions of a lot of people in this group.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned athletes. You're talking about professional athletes, I assume, and bullying.
And
So
college.
identify and college athletes. Interesting. And identifying bullying in a way so that they can manage that more, I guess. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, so that it can relieve their mental load of having to sort through comments or something. It can monitor for them and make them feel safer.
Interesting. I'm curious about this because one of the things that, when we're talking about just individual sanctity and autonomy and the need for artists in general, if you're taking our stuff, that which we've created to be able to create some technology that can create new stuff, and so we were an essential ingredient, the whole consent compensation. Obviously, that seems obvious to me. It's fair use to the developers out there, and the courts seem to be striking that down slowly, but it seems the pressure's getting there. And I mentioned there's the Microsoft, Amazon content marketplaces now. So there's a reason why there's going to a system of licensing, which I believe is going to be a long term. One of the areas that I do believe is exciting for athletes, celebrities, anybody with fandom, it could be individual brands, but I'm curious what you think about this, is that so long as you have your own autonomy and you choose to participate and you set the rules of the game, but like an athlete could use generative AI where they can be athletes, from what I hear, typically don't love being on set because they have more limited time to be on set for commercials and things like that. Yet they want to partake in the economics of commercials. So generative AI can give them the opportunity to say, yes, I'll be in that campaign. They can use their persona, their name, likeness, voice, all that kind of stuff. And then they get approval rights, something like that. Or so that's more commercial. But in the fandom sort of area, it could be an athlete too, or it could be a celeb. Anybody who has a lot of fans, they can, if they choose to do so, give their fans the ability to, take their name, likeness, and create whatever they want with it within certain rules of the game. And then, monetize it in some way. I don't know, maybe micropayments that, okay, I'm LeBron, you can use my name, image, likeness, but it costs you 50 cents. I don't know, something like that. What do you like that and see that as being an opportunity? And are you hearing about any of that moving forward?
From an ethical and legal standpoint, as long as the artist has control, or the celebrity or person has control and they're okay with it, I'm not going to yuck their yum, Peter. Personally, I think that it's a part of a larger concerning societal trend towards the cult of celebrity, where we almost worship these people so much that we don't care what type of content we get from them as long as it's them. They don't have to do things anymore to earn our respect and validation. That would just be a slipperiest slope down towards the extreme of that concern of mine. If you could just press a button, type a few things, press a button, and have your favorite celebrity say whatever to advance your parasocial relationship with them, that I personally would not want to be on either end of that dynamic. But if other people are okay with it, they can do it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily good for our society.
Yeah.
But there are some things that could be. I can definitely imagine good uses of that. I don't want to just put blanket statements out there. More personalization might be fun. Translating to different languages would be great so that people could relate to their favorite celebrities in their native tongues.
Right.
So there are some good uses, but I think overall more concerning than not.
Yeah. I mean, here's an example where when it comes to IP, let's say, Disney just invested $1 billion into OpenAI so that part of that is making its characters, beloved characters, available for Sora, for use in Sora. So if you're a Star Wars fan and you have the ability to take Yoda and through a micropayment or through OpenAI is just part of the economics between Disney, now you can create your own little Star Wars-y 30-second thing with you in it with Yoda. Like that could be cool, I think.
Yeah.
With maybe as long as the controls are set again as by the person who chooses to participate and give their IP or persona. But I think that like the OpenAI, like that kind of super fandom, which could be for a brand, it could be for IP to extend the IP into different kinds of stories. I think that's pretty cool. And again, it gets down to control and compensation.
Yeah, that to me sounds like a next evolution of fan fiction.
Yeah.
Which could be great. And just like fan fiction in the written word has gotten weird, I'm sure that has the potential to get weird too. But that's part of art, you know?
Listen, man, we're going to see so much weird stuff. We already are, but we're going to see so much. Okay, so then just final question for you. You know, you talk to, like I said, you know, a broad swath of people across the business. What is your basic advice to anyone, whether they express excitement or concern or just, hey, what the fuck is going on out there?
I think the best way for us to feel more peace with this situation, regardless of your opinion on generative AI, is to keep creating ourselves. If you're a scientist who loves coding, if you're an artist who loves painting, if you're someone who likes to cook or plant, whatever, I think we would benefit so much from having more people intentionally nurture their creativity. I think it would give more people a better appreciation for the human art that exists out there. Yeah,
well said. You know, one of the things I had we're recording this what is it, February 23rd, February 24th. And I just, like, my newsletter today was about sea dance. And it was about like the kind of the just freewheeling use of AI, generative AI, like an overdependence on it, how it dumbs down the art, leads to more mediocrity and creative atrophy. That's kind of like what it's about.
Yeah.
And the whole point of it is that we have at least in the way I view it, and I think you're probably simpatico to this, is, and Ezra Klein, again, one of my favorite pundits, how he talks about creativity it's all the micro decisions that go along the way too. So creativity is not meant to be easy necessarily. Like, it's hard. And so when you take away all the shit work, there's a lot of pain and agony in terms of creativity, but that pain and agony leads to some of the great art. And so if you strip that all away, is that really good for the arts?
Yes, Peter. I have spent the last 2 years thinking about that every single day. People making art something that's more about the output than the process that goes into it. People forgetting that art is an act of expression. Did I like every minute of writing the books that I've written? No. It was torture, but it was necessary to create this thing that, if not great absolutely, is at least great relative to everything I've ever made before. Like, that's how you grow, is by being uncomfortable in creativity. So I'm glad you brought that up.
And authentically in your own voice, because the only way to be authentic, truly authentic, is if every bit of it is expressed by you rather than facilitated by something else or overtaken by something else. And in any event, in the creative arts, all of us are going to need to struggle with this. In society, we're all going to need to struggle with it. And these are broad philosophical questions too, and which is perfect for the arts that we're in. So listen, it's always a pleasure, Moiya. We haven't spoken for a while, but it's always a pleasure to speak with you. And, I want to definitely check in on an ongoing basis to see if we're making any progress on some of the things that we're talking about, like whether it's regulation, whether it's just where the AI developers are in terms of the overall economics that are at least shared with, the artists who help create the value in the first place in their technology.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's always a pleasure. The time always flies when we chat, so I'd be happy to come back.
Okay, great. Great to see you, Moiya.
You too, Peter. Take care.
The Brain Podcast is a weekly production of Creative Media, Peter Chatti's AI, entertainment, media, and marketing, business advisory, and legal services firm. Look for it every Tuesday and follow it, rate it, and subscribe to it. It's edited and mixed by Luca Chatti with original music by Mark Mothersbaugh Devo. You can learn more about Creative Media at creativemedia.biz. Until next time, keep innovating, but smartly, fairly, and in partnership with artists, not in spite of them. After all innovation ultimately flows from the brain of creators. Cheers.